Hello and welcome to the Blood Reds Morning Bulletin. I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer Emmet Gates, and today we're going to talk about one potential transfer rumour and also look ahead to the Tottenham game at the weekend. But first, let's talk about Khvicha Kvaratskhelia. Obviously, he impressed at Anfield against Liverpool in midweek. Klopp spoke highly of him, and now there's been some rumours that Liverpool may be interested in the Georgian international. What do you make of him, Emmet?
Oh, I think he's a fantastic player. Obviously, unless you happen to know, be a keen observer of Eastern European football, I would say the majority of us had never heard of him prior to the start of the Serie A season, and he's just kind of exploded on the scene, and he's just destroying, right backs left and right in Europe and in Italy. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Kvaratskhelia, um, or Kvaradskhelia as he's known as now in Italy. um, but yeah, I'm a big fan, and I like the unpredictable nature of him. It's almost like he hasn't really been coached or conditioned to play a certain way. He just plays with the freedom, and it's really refreshing to see. It's he tries things that you would see kids on the playground trying. He's very unorthodox in that way, and I like that. He just plays with a freedom and a happiness, and it is nice to see. And obviously he's devastating too at the same time. I mean, he's in multiple goals and assists now at this point, and when he's not in the Napoli side, Napoli kind of aren't the same. Um, and yeah, and considering Napoli paid 10 million euros for him, they got him at an absolute snip. When you think of other players around Europe going for 3, 4, 5 times as much, and they haven't had the impact that he's had, domestically and in Europe this season, it's startling. And it was a great find by Napoli. But yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you point out that sort of freedom, the way which he plays. I've spoken to some of his academy coaches from Georgia in the past, and the thing they told me that kind of freedom is innate within him. They never had to coach or tell him. It's just innate, and obviously in Georgia, street football is quite popular as well. So you could see the elements of that. And I think what's interesting as well is I follow young talents around the world a lot, so I've always had an eye on him when he was in Russia. But it's only really this year that he's kind of exploded in terms of his output, and it's interesting why that has happened. I mean, a lot of the times, I mean, he's still fairly young. A lot of the times, he was a very good dribbler, but his end product was kind of lacking, and it feels like at Napoli and even before when he went back to Georgia very briefly, it's kind of all come together.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is that he'd only, you're saying that his end product has kind of become more polished, and he signed for Napoli at the tail end of last season. I think it was late May he'd signed, so he had only really 2 or 3 months to be coached under Luciano Spalletti. So if you're saying that you'd kept an eye on him beforehand and he kind of was a bit raw, he wasn't really making the right decisions in the final third, then you probably have to give the credit to Spalletti for kind of fine tuning him and turning him into this monster of an attacking midfielder, in the space of 2 or 3 months. Because I know when Napoli let Lorenzo Insigne go, there was kind of question marks over who's going to replace him, and obviously Insigne was a Neapolitan boy, born and raised in the area, and so those were big shoes to fill. And then they signed this kid, and people are like, "Who? Who is this kid?" And 2 or 3 months into the season now, nobody's asked. People have forgotten about Insigne, such has been Australia's, impact. But if you say, that he beforehand that he kind of was a bit unpolished and a bit raw, then I suppose you have to give Spalletti credit for kind of turning him into this goal machine and assist machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, his output was amazing in Georgia when he went back there for a few months because of the Russia-Ukraine war. But
Yeah.
before that, it wasn't anything as impressive as it is now. In terms of Liverpool, I think what I like about him is he presses a lot. He's got a lot of energy, pace. I mean, brilliant in 1v1s, but he does predominantly play on that left wing where Liverpool already have Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota. So it does feel like a bit of a luxury signing if Liverpool do go for him.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I'm due to write a piece about that today for Liverpool.com. Is that, obviously Liverpool has been linked with him, but with Luis Diaz there in his prime, it would be a waste of resources, I think, to go after Kvaratskhelia, at least now. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, maybe if he's still at Napoli and, Luis Diaz maybe is not in his prime or he's in a bad run of form or something happens, who knows? Yeah, but I'm with you. I don't think that Liverpool should really go after him at this point. I think there are more pressing issues, i.e., the midfield, that need addressed rather than signing another winger.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows, in 2 years' time, he could already be playing for Real Madrid or Barcelona or one of those clubs at this rate, even Manchester City, because he is in that good of a form. So maybe we'll leave that one for now and look ahead to a more sort of pressing concern in the Tottenham game, which feels like one of Liverpool's toughest in a while, doesn't it, Emmett?
Yeah, exactly. Playing an Antonio Conte side is never the easiest thing, and especially in Liverpool's case where they're coming off the back of 2 consecutive defeats to lesser teams, with Nottingham Forest and Leeds. So I think this. I don't want to say it's a must-win game, but if Liverpool don't win, you kind of look at the prospects in the second half of the season and you think, you know, is top four really even feasible at this point? Say if Liverpool lose against Tottenham and Newcastle win, that's going to be 11 points from fourth place. By what are we now? Early November. I mean, I know we can all point to last season at in January 2022, Liverpool were 14 points behind Man City, at the top of the table, and managed to trim it down to one by the final day. But Liverpool aren't the same team. I think we can all recognise that they're not close to the same team as they were 5-6 months ago. So I think it's going to be a Herculean effort if they lose against Tottenham to make it into the top four. So I think this is a very, very important game, and playing a Conte side is never the easiest, even when at top form. But considering where Liverpool are, especially in the league, I mean, we have seen that Liverpool on their day can beat any side. They beat Man City, and Man City are a lot better than Tottenham. But it's Liverpool's consistency that's been the issue this year, and you just wonder, they had a good performance against Napoli on Tuesday. Can they follow that up with another good performance this season that shows us they can't? It's usually one good performance followed by a bad one. So, yeah, not the best of times for playing Tottenham, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the concern, really. It's always been one step forward, two steps back for Liverpool this
Yeah.
season. Against Napoli, though, Liverpool were pretty impressive, and they beat a side who haven't tasted defeat yet this season. So I think that will give them a moral boost, certainly. And I think one of the interesting parts of that game is Liverpool sort of played with the 4-3-3 formation again, and I wonder if we're going to see a repeat of that. But then again, Darwin Núñez didn't start that game. Is he going to feature against Tottenham? And if so, where does he fit in?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and Liverpool did look comfortable in the 4-3-3 again against Napoli, but then at the same time, when you have Darwin Núñez and you've paid all this money for him, do you continue to put him on the bench, or do you pivot? Does Jurgen Klopp pivot again to a 4-3-1-2 and have Firmino as a number 10 in behind Salah and Núñez? I think I would say that it would be more of the latter than the former. I think we will see Núñez back in the starting 11 and Klopp will pivot. Um, I think just purely because Luis Diaz is still out. If Luis Diaz had been fit, you maybe would have he would have stuck with a 4-3-3. But I just don't think he's got the personnel to play it in such a. Because the weird thing about the Napoli game was that both teams were already through, So there was nothing riding on it really, except for maybe if Liverpool could win 3-0 and top the group. So it's Napoli. I mean, we all saw Napoli weren't the same side as they were in the previous 5 games. So they kind of went for it a little bit in the second half, but they were kind of a bit more reserved. So it's hard to know what to take away from that game from a Liverpool perspective. So I would say Klopp will reinstate Nunes into the starting 11, and we could see a 4-3-1-2 again, which would probably be the best formation considering the personnel that he has available. But I will say that I think having Konate back is a massive boost, and he was really good on Tuesday night.
Absolutely, it's going to be interesting. Jim here has left a sort of prediction. He said Spurs have become the Simeone Atletico Madrid of the Premier League. They have injuries too. This will be an ugly grind. Darwin off the bench, late for the win. Let's hope he's right. I think that about wraps it up for today. Thanks, Emmet, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And make sure to check out all the Blood Red content going out today as well.